after last week, but I put it behind us, and I'm ready to get into week 7.
However dejected he is, I'm that, but a little more.
Yeah, we're ready to move on to week 7. Just ready to hop right in. Kyle, you know what game's up first. You got it in front of you.
Yeah,
Uh, Moving on from week 6.
yeah, let's just ignore it like it never happened because we've got just the best game ever. I'm so excited to talk about anything else but last week. Green Bay versus the Oakland Raiders. It is a 46.5 point total. Green Bay, big home favorites at 5.5. Like this game is going to be pretty news based in terms of Geronimo Allison. I don't think is practicing right now in concussion protocol. Devonte Adams was very pessimistic on his outlook going into last week, so it didn't. I don't know. His chances of playing aren't great for me this week. But that puts like Alan Lazard particularly. I think maybe other people who like don't like talented players will say Jake Kumaro, but for me it's obviously Alan Lazard that's going to be getting the bulk of the work. John, any interest in Alan Lazard? I guess it's pretty contingent, obviously, on Devonte Adams and Geronimo Allison not playing. But if they don't, what's your interest in Lazard?
Yeah, I have a decent amount of interest like you. As long as both of those guys are out, you're gonna get probably what do you think his projection is for as far as target volume? Like, I would think it's basically him, MBS, and Kumaru, who Aaron Rodgers had basically no interest in targeting, even though he played, I think, the most snaps among wide receivers for Green Bay last game. So I would say he probably sees 6 to 9 targets, just spitballing, but somewhere in that range for his cheap price tag, as long as those guys are out in a solid matchup. I think he could be a nice form of salary relief. But I think the bigger thing, well, maybe not bigger with Devonte Adams being the news, but the running back touches between Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones. Do either of you have a lean on which running back you'd prefer? Being that Jones has been getting the passing game work, but Jamal Williams out touched him and out snapped him this past game and looked a little bit better. So do you guys have a lean either way on Jones and Williams?
I dodged the Aaron Jones landmine on the Monday Thursday slate. Contemplated playing Williams, didn't. Wish I had. Um, but I think on this slate, like I don't mind going back to Aaron Jones at 7,100 in tournaments. He's not my favorite play, but I would prefer him to Williams. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
absolutely like he's the better play in just raw projection than Williams, but I think like Williams takes enough away from Jones to me because we've seen throughout Jones' career that he is not like he hasn't been given a workhorse role. Do I think he's deserving of it? I don't know. Probably he looks pretty good, but like it's not what he's done throughout his career, so history says it probably won't happen. So he at least does enough to scare me off of Jones for the most part.
They gave him all the opportunity. Like if he doesn't fumble that ball or drop that 40-yard like wide open in his hands touchdown pass, which was a touchdown going away, there was no one within like 5 to 10 yards of him. Then maybe they just run him and he's at that price tag. He makes value, and we don't see Jamal Williams. But unfortunately, he fumbled. He dropped that pass, and we it was Jamal Williams 22 fantasy points and Aaron Jones pretty much in the doghouse for the pack. I just think they're gonna try to get him his confidence back. So I kind of prefer him to Williams. Speaking about Adam Lazard, I think we kind of hit you guys both hit the nail on the head. Like if Devontae and Allison are out, Lazard is like a free square in cash, nearly a free square in cash. Um, if you wanted a game stack this game, I think Darren Waller is a really good play at 4,700. Green Bay hasn't been great versus tight ends, and Josh Jacobs seen 26 attempts in the running game as well as um, passes, three targets in the pass game as well. So I don't mind going to him. This game's pretty interesting. It's a 47 total. I'm not a fan of the highest total game on the slate, so it could be something to pull value from, I guess.
So I want to touch on that. What you said at the end there, you are not a fan of the highest total game on the slate, just in terms of it's going to be the most popular one. Like it's Atlanta versus the Rams. Atlanta at home, 3 point dogs with a 54.5 point total. I think the next closest on the main slate is 50.5. So explain to me like why you are not like all in on this game, which I imagine like a large portion of people playing tournaments will be.
I just think like I just want to pull the money up on the total. So like I think the majority of the money right now is on the under. Is it on the under? Yeah, the majority. Well, Vegas is lean is the under is plus 140. Where's the sharp money though? John, do you have it in front of you?
I'm pulling it up now. Hang on.
I just for me like I just don't. I think these are two bad teams. Like the Rams should be better with Ramsey on defense. Atlanta's done really well, and Matt Ryan's been able to go over 300 plus passing yards in every game. Um, but this is the week that I'm getting off that Matt Ryan train. I don't think I'm going to be playing him in cash. Cooper Cup at 7,400. I don't love it. I'd rather go back there than other places from last week that were pretty much bust. But there's not a lot. There's not a lot of like concentrated usage in this game.
Yeah, public is hammering the over.
Hammering the over, yeah,
Yes,
great.
75% of the money is
Oh my
on the
god.
over. So it's come up a full point since open. I think we really need to talk about this game though, because like Kyle said, this game kind of determines the slate. Just with the high over under, we've seen the Rams get into shootouts in the past. I know we didn't see it last week because everybody on that team busted hard. But I think we could go back here. I know Cooper Cup's price is pretty high, but I mean, we basically got like the absolute stone like nut low from Cooper Cup. Like we're never gonna get that game from him again. And now he has a good matchup against Atlanta. I think we could go back there. No news yet on the Todd Gurley stuff, but I'm kind of just taking a wait and see approach with that backfield. But I like Devontae Freeman. He's had a string of solid games here. He's been involved in the passing game, and that was kind of the knock on him before was Ito Smith was mixing in too much and he wasn't getting a ton of volume. He's seen that volume now. He's still the goal line back, and he's pretty affordable. I think he's 5,600 or something. So I like him. Yeah, I know they're a dog in this game, but at least he's at home and it's only a 3-point dog. So I like Devontae Freeman. Kyle, any lean on the Rams backfield if Todd Gurley is ruled out again?
So right now, Malcolm Brown is actually day to day. I don't think he practiced at all today. So it looks like it's either Todd Gurley because I don't. It almost seems like Malcolm Brown is not going to play, and I would imagine if he plays, it's in a limited capacity. So it seems like there's a very real chance that either Todd Gurley plays or we get the Daryl Henderson week of all Daryl Henderson weeks. Like I think Bobby, would you say that Daryl Henderson's like 3,500 or something?
Yeah, he's around 3,500. He looks so fast. Like I just can't believe they'd play. Well, I get it. Like he's a rookie in the NFL's like so. Like they hate relinquishing veteran jobs to rookie running backs, but they have to get him more involved. I think he makes for a really great game stack, or a great play in a game stack. Um, I just there's no the where's the concentrated usage outside of Freeman? Like Julio, obviously we know that he's going to see Ramsey. Maybe it's Calvin Ridley this week in tournaments that you kind of maybe you stack Matt Ryan, Freeman, and Calvin Ridley. Um, I see it on the Atlanta side. I just don't see it running back for the Rams outside of Cooper Cup. These plays would just seem so obvious. I don't know. I just don't love this game. I last week I was on the under. It was like my only good call of the week in terms of like um, just being on like the San Francisco Rams under. Now it's uh, Goff on the road. Like I'd rather play Matt Ryan. I think they're both Matt Ryan and Goff are going to be the two highest owned plays in cash for quarterbacks. I just don't know which one. I definitely lean Ryan. I don't know. I don't love the Atlanta Falcons or the Rams at this point.
I understand like why you're pessimistic on the Rams. I am too. Like I'm with you. I still like this game just because Atlanta has been in shootouts. The Rams have been in shootouts. Like I can definitely see this game shooting out. It's in a dome. But I definitely get it because the Rams have kind of shit the bed like multiple times now, even though it's a good matchup. But Kyle, I wanted to ask you, did it say by chance what Malcolm Brown's injury was? Was it dust? Is that what the official injury was? Or
He actually he's a missing persons right now.
okay, got it.
He's on a milk carton somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think if either one of them doesn't play, Daryl Henderson at least is in consideration. For me, I actually expect to see Austin Hooper as like a top two owned tight end this week. literally everybody played him. Like he was 60% owned in double ups, like the big field double ups, and he hit for everybody. Like everybody just remembers how good of a play he was. He's going to be between him and Hunter Henry, who's just like the value play of the week at 4K. So I guess that's kind of my question: is are you getting off Austin Hooper this week? He's really dominating the volume there in terms of like what we've seen from the past and what you need to do on this team that throws more passes than anyone else. Like right now, 25% of, or excuse me, 19% of the team's target share, 17% of air yards. Like on the Atlanta offense that throws more than anyone else. John, are you getting off Austin Hooper?
Yeah, see, everyone played Austin Hooper last week except me because I paid up for Travis Kelsey because I'm a sick fish. So I'm probably not going Hooper again just because there are some decent options for a little bit less of a price that we'll get into later. But he's always a solid play. He's seeing volume. You mentioned how many times Atlanta's throwing the ball. So even though he doesn't have like as big of a market share as like a Mark Andrews or somebody else like that, it's just they throw so much more that even a smaller market share is probably worth more because of all the attempts. But he's always a good play. It just comes down to price.
Yeah, I played Hooper in cash last week, and I just where I went wrong was in turn. I played two, ended up playing two lineups, and then in tournaments I just completely faded him for Mark Andrews. I thought Mark Andrews like a good pivot. Like I get why you went up to Kelsey. It makes like I didn't think Hooper was as great a play as like everyone thought he was. I thought Kelsey or Andrews were better like pivots. I don't know. I if Hooper's the guy this week, like I'd go right back to him. John, how are you feeling about Matt Ryan? Are we locking him in cash?
I wouldn't say locking him in. He definitely projects as a strong play. You know, the price just keeps going up and up and up. You mentioned he's hit 300 passing yards every game. I actually like another guy in that price range. You know, we always look for a cheap quarterback, especially in cash, but there really is no viable cheap options this week. So I like a guy that's a couple $100 more to Matt Ryan, and we'll get into him here in a couple games. And I think Kyle will definitely be on board with that one.
I think I'm on board too. I think I know who we're talking about here.
All right, let's get into our next game. Before we go there, we have Minnesota versus Detroit. Minnesota are 1 point road favorites over Detroit, a 46-point total. A game unlike last with a lower total but much more concentrated usage. Did you, Bobby? Did you call this Stephon Diggs week last week? Because it was like week one where I said like, oh, Sammy Watkins not a great play, and he just like completely dishonored my name, and I can't even have children because they'll just have to live with this shame.
Yeah, Diggs and Thielen. I played Diggs last week and Thielen the week before, but I played Thielen. I did not play Stephon Diggs. So I didn't get those 43 points. Yeah, I don't know. I just Minnesota obviously in this situation, like I'm not going to the wide receivers. I think it's a Dalvin Cook game. They're in a dome. He could be contrarian versus Detroit in their rush defense, which has been great with Snacks Harrison since he's been there. On the Detroit side, like I wouldn't know who to run it back with. Like maybe T.J. Hawkinson. Kenny Galladay is pretty cheap at 5,800. Nothing really sticking out though outside of Dalvin as a play in tournaments and on FanDuel and cash. Maybe John, how are you kind of seeing it?
Yeah, Dalvin's pretty much the guy for me as well. One thing that's interesting, 68% of the bets are on Minnesota here, but the line moved in favor of the home dog in Detroit by 2 whole points, which is a significant line movement. So that just tells you sharp money's on the home dogs here for what that's worth. But I can kind of see this game playing out as like a lower scoring defensive battle. I don't really see much shootout potential in this one, and that's why I would kind of just stick to Dalvin Cook and maybe carry on Johnson in like deep field GPPs.
Yeah, Detroit's really good. I think as a team.
They're
Um,
underrated for
yeah,
sure.
they're underrated. I think they're going to make the playoffs, and I definitely could see like a winning record. I was looking at their schedule like 2 days ago. Um, yeah, that's interesting that the line moved in favor of their spread. Kyle, how are you kind of viewing this game?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way as John talked about, where I could very much see this game hitting the under. So, and the Vikings typically have wanted to, like, up until the past 2 weeks under Mike Zimmer, they clearly just want to ground and pound. I think Dalvin Cook is still, like you said, a fine play. I'm not as concerned with the defense as I am optimistic about the volume he's going to get, especially as a favorite. I think on Johnson and Kenny Galladay are fine plays, but I think they're probably just better plays on the slate in general. I do think Galladay, given the air yards he's seen, is probably a pretty solid play in tournaments. Won't make it into my cash game lineup too much, but I don't know. That's about it for me in this game.
Hey boys, we might be missing something here with this game because I just noticed too, 57% of people are on the under, but the over has actually moved 2 whole points as well, which is a big movement, for not really any reason that I'm seeing. So I just thought that might be interesting. We might have to dig a little bit deeper in as the week goes on, because that's a lot of line movement, especially for a game, that I think have two pretty solid defenses.
Yeah, it was interesting that's interesting to note just because like if Stafford could get anything done in the red zone, like Stafford was pretty close in terms of like yardage early, like throwing the deep ball. Both these teams like to run the ball, but if they're spreading the offense out more, then maybe that's for the reason for the movement. We've seen both teams kind of pass in the last week. Well, not really Detroit, but they definitely came out firing more than they usually did and previously in the season.
Yeah, I think it's actually definitely a good call by you, John. Just to like pay attention to things, even if we're betting the under. Like it's not like we're not going to fly in the face of logic saying that like everything is pointing to the over here if we see that. So let's move on to the next game. We have Jacksonville versus Cincinnati. Two workhorse running backs. One of them is terrible, named Joe Mixon, and one of them gets used like Christian McCaffrey. Leonard Fournette, pretty much like I'm locking in my cash game lineups until he hits like a significantly larger price than he's at right now at 7K. Second in the NFL in touches, only behind McCaffrey. It's just like I don't know. I don't see how you wouldn't play him as a 4 point favorite against a defense that also gives up top 2 receptions and receiving yards to opposing running backs. Really, the question is, do you run him back? Like, do you run like Gardner Minshew instead of him in tournaments with Chark or D.D. Westbrook, who burned everyone last week who played them? And is there anything you're interested in Cincinnati? I think Tyler Boyd, despite like Auden Tate somehow out targeting him significantly, I still think Tyler Boyd's a better play. And I think if you run Fournette, you kind of have to run him back with Boyd in tournaments at least, because Fournette's going to be so incredibly chalky. I think you have to do something to differentiate your Fournette lineups with some sort of correlation. And the only way I see myself doing that is with Boyd. So what are you doing in this game? John, go ahead.
Yeah, pretty much same as you. Love Fournette. I think you can run it back with Tyler Boyd. If you want to get a little more risky, Auden Tate, like you said, he did see like 12 targets last week. I don't think we could expect that moving forward, but the price is cheap on him, so it's not the worst play. And then D.D. Westbrook, D.D. Westbrook, DJ Chark, one of those guys will probably have a big game, but I'd stick with them in tournaments. What about you, Bob?
Yeah, I wish this total was just higher. Leonard Fournette, obviously the play in cash. I think Gardner Minshew and going to Gardner Minshew and like DJ Chark. I think that's interesting to me for tournaments. I think Minshew's just with his rushing equity a good play. He'd be the pay down guy for me in this situation. Like Cincinnati's a home dog. If Jacksonville were to get behind, I think DJ Chark and Minshew at low ownership would be in a good spot. And also, like you guys said, running it back with Boyd makes a ton of sense. And Boyd's just around. I think T.Y. Hilton's 5,800 or 5,600 as well. So Tyler Boyd's right in that price range where Hilton's going to be 200 more, but a lot more chalky. And Tyler Boyd busted last week for everyone. So I kind of like this game sneakily for tournaments. The issue is the total's 44 points, and seems like there's better spots on the slate. Joe Mixon at 5K is another guy who I would never play, couldn't pay me to play. But 5K is pretty cheap, so I don't know. Kyle, any final thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think definitely not playing Joe Mixon. Like when you're playing Joe Mixon, you also have to factor in the fact that he's got one of the worst offensive lines in the league. Like started the season banged up and have not obviously got any better since. I have no interest in playing like a bad offense that wants to pass. They're like leading the league in passing percentage. And Joe Mixon isn't getting like the dominant receiving work I expect him to get because that's what he got last season. He has one game so far. He has 2 games over at or over 5 targets. Like given how much behind, like how often they're behind, I would expect that number to be much higher. So he's not even game script proof like I would have thought just in terms of overall usage. I'm not playing him at all.
If you play Joe Mixon, just literally like take your money out of your wallet, get some get like a lighter and some gasoline and just burn that shit up because he's terrible, man. He sucks.
Yeah,
Uh,
you said his price was 5K. If you paid me 5K, I wouldn't roster him on a single team.
All right,
he's so bad, dude.
let's move on to our next game with running backs I am more interested in. We've got San Francisco facing Washington. They are 10-point road favorites. San Francisco is. Totals moved down from 42.5 to 41. I guess the good news is that the implied total for San Francisco is still 25.5 points, which is like pretty high for the slate. So like their like expected points are still very viable. The Redskins, on the other hand, I don't know how you could play any of them. John, do you have any lean on the running backs in this game? I mean, obviously, Tevin Coleman, Matt Breida, because we've seen both of them getting a decent amount of work. I think Coleman's clearly the lead guy. He's got 18 and 16 carries, I believe, in his last 2 games. Do you expect that sort of, well, that split to continue, but also just the amount they're running the ball in general?
I do. I do this week just because of the matchup, and it kind of sucks because I think both of them are good talents. It's just their ceiling is capped because the other one's there. So, but like you said, I think Tevin Coleman's the main guy. Evan Silva mentioned the red zone usage. I think up to this point, Matt Breida has 2 red zone touches in 6 games, and Tevin Coleman has 10 red zone touches in or carries in like 2 games or whatever he's played. So clearly Coleman's the red zone guy. So he definitely has more touchdown equity. It's a good matchup. I don't hate the play, but at the same time, I don't love it either because he is splitting work. I think I've definitely leaned more towards George Kittle here. I just always love George Kittle. Good matchup. Can't really go wrong there. And then the last thing I'll mention is Dante Pettis has seen his snaps rise over the last couple weeks. Just something to keep note of moving forward. Anyone I missed, Bob, or any other plays you like in this game?
No, you pretty much hit them all. The 49ers defense at 4,100, I think, is a pretty good play. Just because they're going to be contrarian because people aren't going to want to pay up, and also they're not going to know like who to necessarily correlate them with. Like it obviously seems like it's Tevin Coleman, um, but I just think for that reason, like that uncertainty will make people stay off the 49ers D when they're in a really good spot. Even though they are coming across the country, which would also give people trepidation, but I don't mind it in tournaments.
Yeah, I guess this is of note. Adrian Peterson, 23 carries last week. I think there was coach speak that he was going to get the ball more. That came to fruition, but it also helped that they played the worst like opposing rushing defense in the league, and they were favored for, I would imagine, their only time this season, like through the rest of the season. He still had an awesome ceiling game of less than 19 points. Like even if he scores a touchdown, this team doesn't score enough touchdowns to ever play Adrian Peterson. They're never going to be in positive enough game script unless they play Miami to play Adrian Peterson. There's just like no way you could ever pay me to play Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, Adrian Peterson and Joe Mixon are pretty much in the same category for me in DFS.
Yeah,
Peterson's like a older version of Mixon, just both really dusty.
yeah. You could throw Malcolm Brown in that on that list of guys I'll just never play again.
Never again, dude.
I
Never.
also find this to be funny. San Francisco has 4 running backs that all cost more on DraftKings than Adrian Peterson.
Wow,
Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert both cost more than Adrian Peterson.
wow.
All right, let's move on to the next game on the slate. We have Houston versus Indianapolis. The spread has moved a point in favor of Indy. It opened as a pick 'em. Right now it's at a 47-point total. Bob, you kind of opened me up to this, so I'll let you kick it off. T.Y. Hilton, like getting strong consideration from you and Cash. Do you want to talk to me about that a little more? Yeah.
Yeah, just fantastic numbers versus Houston. John probably already has them, so I pulled up. I don't have him. 5,900 he was, not 58. I just think he's a really good play. And then on top of that, I just like the fact that he's at home in the dome. I think it makes that's where you want to roster Ty. So I think he's a really strong play. Marlon Mack as well at 6K. Really like him. John, where are you kind of going? And do you have those Ty numbers in front of you?
I don't have him pulled up, but I know he's tiptoed around 200 receiving yards multiple times against the Texans.
Yeah.
And, I'm not really, this player against this team type of guy. but at some point you just have to believe it. Like it's got to be something about the way the Texans like scheme their defense, and I'm not even sure what type of if they play man or zone. I don't even know, but whatever they play, it does not work against T.Y. Hilton because he literally puts up monster games against them almost every single time out. And like you said, they're at home. And the price, dude, he's 5,900. Like, come on. Like, if this was against, if this matchup wasn't even that great, he would project as a pretty solid play. So I think he's a smash this week. I love the call. I like the Marlon Mack call as well. I think you can run on Houston. And I actually like their defense at 2K flat. You know, I've always liked to target Houston's weak offensive line. Deshaun Watson takes a lot of sacks, and they're so cheap. It opens up a lot of salary relief. So I like that play as well. I actually really like this game, you know. And could we just talk about the Texans real quick? Like, I know Deshaun Watson got there for everybody last week, which was great, but that was like the most tilting sweat of my life watching that game. Like the play calling was atrocious. Like if they're going to be a run first football team when they have Will Fuller, DeAndre Hopkins, like all of this talent at wide receiver, and they're going to run Carlos Hyde 26 times, like oh my, it was just brutal to watch. And if they're going to try and run the ball that many times, I'm probably going to fade this offense moving forward, especially after a big game from Watson. I'm not touching him this week. Am I crazy?
No, I actually think what you're bringing up is a very good argument to play Marlon Mack with the Colts defense. You talked about both of them, but the correlation between them is great. And also, I imagine what Watson's coming off of a 30-some point game and a 44-point game, I believe. He's going to be extremely highly owned in a game that I think will be at least somewhat popular. If you like, I didn't actually think about the fact that the way the Texans are calling their plays is just another reason to fade this offense. So you can really leverage people getting on the Texans, and if T.Y. Hilton's popular, you could even leverage that by running Colts defense with Marlon Mack. I'd only do it in tournaments because I think T.Y. Hilton is just such a good value in cash, but I will definitely have some exposure to that specific way to attack this game.
Yeah, I think DeAndre Hopkins also. We should just mention, like, I love the Colts defense call, and like you can get away with them giving up a touchdown. Hopkins, just to mention, like, due for some positive regression in the red zone, like seeing the least amount of targets in that offense, and that's just going to swing back eventually. So I don't mind like running D Hop at all. I think I'd be. It feels weird to be off Will Fuller in a dome, but like John, you made a real good point. Like Bill O'Brien, just fade Bill O'Brien. Like his play calling. I get it. He wanted to run Hyde because he wanted to keep Mahomes off the field, and ultimately it worked because they won the football game. But I just don't love Houston's like scheme at all. So I don't know. The only guy I'd be really interested in is D Hop.
Yeah, and like this isn't the first time that's happened. Like Carlos Hyde has seen 20 carries in like 3 or 4 games already. And, you know, even the big Will Fuller game the previous week, like what do you say, Kyle? Deshaun Watson only had like 35 passing attempts that game. Like that's not a lot of volume for a quarterback. So I still have tournament interest. Like you said, I love the D Hop call. Eventually he's gonna be, you know, back to his normal self. Will Fuller had like 3 big touchdown drops against the Chiefs. He's going to see opportunity down the field, especially if Stills is out. So I think you could still target them in tournaments. It's just moving forward, you know, I'm kind of lower on Watson than the field.
Am I fish to be off Fuller? Like I feel like the way Indy plays, like they don't let people get behind them, I guess. So I don't know. I know maybe I have a little recency bias towards how Fuller played last week. But he very well could have had like 3 touchdowns again last week. So I feel like Fuller has to be in your tournament pool. Um,
I don't think it's fish to fade though. Like a guy like that, he could very well have 6 points. You know, we've seen it from him before, or he can put up 50. Like we've seen that from him before too. But if he's going to be
weeks ago,
yeah, if he's going to be 20% owned though, like and you fade and he puts up a 6 point dud, like then you're probably taking your victory lap. So I don't think it's fish at all.
good, good. No, good to know. Good to know. Kyle, what are we doing with the next game here?
All right, next game I have on our slate is Arizona versus the Giants. I think there are a lot of good plays in this game. It's just tough for me to exactly pin down where they're at. Like David Johnson hasn't had the ceiling game yet, but it seems like his floor is one of the highest given his receiving game work. Saquon Barkley, all accounts are that he's going to be back. He's a full participant in practice as of today, Wednesday. Sterling Shepard in concussion protocol. I don't expect him to play. So I think that covers probably everything. Evan Ingram, I think, was either a limited or full participant to play or in practice as well. So another guy who I expect to play. I think that covers all the injuries. Kyler, I still don't think we've seen the ceiling game from him just because they kick so many field goals. Cliff is the dumbest smart person ever. Like, how do you kick that many field goals when your offense is moving the ball so well? Like, it's incredible how suboptimal their field goal kicking is. But on the off chance they do start punching them in on third down, yeah, he has like an incredible ceiling, and so does this entire offense. It's just struggling for me. I don't want to run it back with Fitzgerald necessarily just because his ceiling has seemed pretty capped. Like maybe you guys can maybe that's part of the touchdown thing that I'm talking about with the kicking so many field goals. So where are you guys going with Arizona would be my first question. Go ahead, Bobby, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I really like Daniel Jones at 6,100. I feel like that's like a lot of people gravitating to Goff and Matt Ryan and Russell Wilson, who we'll get to. But I really like Dan. I think Daniel Jones is a great pivot, and you could correlate him with Saquon. Also, like the Giants' defense, pretty similarly to like how you guys like Marlon Mack and the Colts' defense. I think the Giants are going to go overlooked in the spot versus Arizona when Kyler has shown the ability to turn the ball over. So I think that's interesting. And Darius Slayton, if Sterling Shepard were to sit, I think he's a good play. On the Arizona side, like I like Kyler. I think running him back with Fitzgerald or Kirk's running the game stack back with Fitzgerald or Kirk is fine. Keyshawn Johnson seen a lot of snaps. He's at 3,900. I wouldn't. I think we're going to see him get involved this week a little bit more. So I don't know. I like this game. I think it's an interesting game that could go under the radar, and it could be good to get leverage off that Atlanta game with this Giants game. John, how are you seeing it?
No, I have a lot of interest in it as well. This total is up 2 points since open, so that's a pretty big move as well. Love the Daniel Jones call, surprisingly. Like, I feel like a lot of people are going to be off him just because he, had that one monster game and then pretty bad games since, but he's faced really good defenses. Like, I'm pretty sure we're all in agreement. New England's defense is one of the best in the NFL, if not the best right now. So, like, everybody watching that game in an island game, everyone's like, oh, Daniel Jones sucks, and his price is up. But Arizona's given up the third most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks this season. We know Daniel Jones has the rushing equity as well. He's a home favorite with a high team total, which correlates well to quarterback fantasy points. So I think he's going to be low owned, and I think it's a great call. So shout out to you, Bob, on that one. But the guy I teased earlier was Kyler Murray. I think he's a better play than Matt Ryan this week. And Kyle hit on it. We talked about it last week. We haven't seen the good passing along with the good rushing game yet. And I know he added like 30-something rushing yards last week. So an extra 3 points there. Obviously, he balled out in the passing game, still put up over 30 DraftKings points. But we've been saying it all season. He's going to have one of those games where he gets the 300 yards passing, and then he has the big rushing game as well. And it could be this spot against the Giants. So I like both of the quarterbacks in this game. I see why the game could possibly shoot out. I guess the real question is, what are the pieces that you're taking if you do think this game's going to shoot out? And that's kind of what I haven't identified yet. So I was kind of hoping to get some clarity from you, Kyle, and Bob as well.
One, I guess, specifically for Christian Kirk doesn't. I'll touch on this. Christian Kirk does not look awfully likely to play. Like they were just saying that he has to be 100% to play. It's kind of negative. They're saying he's making strides, but still isn't quite ready to play yet. He could play. I would bet against it though. So yeah, maybe you go with Keyshawn Johnson. He got like 4 targets last week, which I think was like second among the receivers, but they weren't super deep targets. I don't know. I think he's at least worth considering, especially in like larger field tournaments. On the Giants side, though, Darius Slayton last week, second on the team in targets at 8 in terms of receivers, and 51 more air yards than Golden Tate. Like he's getting a consistent work of deep balls with Sterling Shepard out. So I think he's very much in consideration for tournaments when you're stacking this game. If he like 4,100, yeah, that's a pretty low price for a dude who could be the second receiver in one of the higher totals on the entire slate.
No, I'm with you. I like the Slayton call. I think that Slayton and Keyshawn Johnson are two guys that I would be targeting in this game if you were game stacking. Both guys I think are like going to see more. Well, Slayton's already seen it, and I think Keyshawn's going to take a jump for the Cardinals, especially if Kirk sits. That would pretty much be it for me. What game do we have up next?
We have Miami versus Buffalo. Buffalo, a 16.5 point favorite at home, a 40.5 point total. It's moved up a point since it opened, so it's in the right direction, but still, I mean, 40.5 is still incredibly low for this slate. John Brown, always a good tournament play, borderline a good cash play this week, I think, against the worst passing defense in the league. I guess that's kind of where I want to start. John, are you, like, how close is he to playing in cash? Because I think conventionally you think of him as this high variance receiver, but he's getting right now. I think he leads the team in target share. He's tied exactly with Cole Beasley at 39 targets, 22% target share. So how close are you to playing him in cash? Just because conventionally you don't think of him as that type of player, but like the volume is there, and I don't mind playing high upside player. Like I want to get still upside in my cash game lineup. So what are you doing with him?
Yeah, I like John Brown this week. What's his price? I haven't looked.
7,500.
Yeah.
What is it? 65?
100, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's a good price. Great matchup at home. It's you really can't ignore these Bills guys. 28 and a half team total. Like, is that the highest on the slate? If not, it's really close. So, I mean, you got to play guys on this side. So, John Brown has a good matchup. He's the number one guy. So that's my favorite play. Devin Singletary is coming back this week, so I think that's something to talk about. I don't know, how much of the role he's going to handle, but as a big home favorite, I think he's in the conversation, and pretty much no interest on the Miami side. But looking like the Bills are the survivor pick of the week. What do you think, Bob?
Yeah, it looks like it's the Bills. Till Ryan Fitzpatrick lets that revenge narrative off, going back up to Buffalo. But no, 28 and a half is the second highest team total on the slate. So I think Josh Allen's obviously in play. John Brown, 5,500. John Brown's like a guy I like to roster. Like if I run my cash game in tournaments, like, and I want to pivot at a spot that might be highly out. Like if a guy like T.Y. Hilton at 5,900 is going to be highly owned, maybe I pivot to John Brown. I think you can make the case to do that this week. Yeah, outside of that, like Miami, like I don't want to roster any of these guys. Kenyon Drake's seen an increase in usage, but they don't want to win it all. Mark Walton's chopping at the bit there, so as well, he's seen some good targets share last week and some good usage mixed in with Drake. So it's nothing that I want to target. I think it would be pretty much Brown or Josh Allen for me in this game.
Yeah, that covers everything I would have to say about this. Let's move on to the Chargers versus the Titans. Titans, 2 point home favorites, 40 point total. It's moved up a point and a half, I believe. It's still, like I said, even lower than the last game. So it's still another low total on a game with a handful of high totals. Chargers splitting their running back carries, and they're not looking like a productive offense. Maybe the receiving game is where you lean towards, John, given that there are underdogs right now, and they pretty much have it narrowed down to two players in Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. So what are you doing with their receiving game?
Yeah, I think we could take advantage on the prices here. They played the Sunday night game, so prices aren't really affected for the next slate. So Hunter Henry had the monster 2 touchdown game. Can't really expect that. That was like insane production, but he's only 4K, so I think he's pretty much looking maybe not a lock, but he's looking very strong in all formats. I think Keenan Allen saw a nice price drop. That makes me have interest in him in a possible bounce back spot. And Mike Williams is super underpriced as well. So I know the total's not great, but I do like the prices on the Chargers side. And I could see them, bouncing back well in this spot. What about you, Bob?
Yeah, I love the calls. It stinks that this total is 39.5 because I want to get on the Keenan Allen train. There's a squeaky wheel narrative there that I feel like they're going to try to grease. He was speaking up on social media. Mike Williams, underpriced, has seen over 200 yards in the past two games or something. No, like four for seven, like just good, really good usage for Mike Williams. Hunter Henry's going to be chalky, like you said. And I like running it back. I'm going to hate to say this with Derrick Henry at 5,800. Chargers are just a run funnel. I think it makes sense. Ryan Tannehill under center maybe dumps it off to Henry a little bit more. Corey Davis at 4K is not even like someone I'd be afraid to roster in tournaments just because the offense should change at Ryan Tannehill under center for Tennessee. I just don't like the total in terms of this game.
I have a question. I was just looking at this. I didn't play Derrick Henry last week, so I don't know how this happened. How did he get 15 carries in a game they won 16 to nothing?
I know I get you. Like I don't want to play Derrick Henry. I just think the Chargers are a run funnel and you can get away with it. Them coming across country to Tennessee. Derrick Henry's only 5,800. Like it's not something I'm in love with, but um, I don't know. I just think that if I wanted to roster some of these Chargers, like I like Keenan Allen a ton at that price. Like Mike Williams running it back with Henry isn't the worst play in tournaments. It could be a really bad play.
Yeah, it
John,
could be. The Mike Williams call though, just to add context to what you were saying, over the past 2 weeks, weeks 5 and 6, 347 air yards. That is 44 more
air
than
yards, not passing, not receiving yards. I'm sorry. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that is 44 more air yards than any other player in the NFL. Like they are going to him deep and they're going to him often. So I think he is a phenomenal play, but I'd probably just be inclined to run him alone in this game, much like the John Brown call.
Any love for like Rivers at 5,500 or Tannehill in tournaments? I know I'm getting crickets, but just wondering.
No, no, I mean, I definitely, first look at pricing, I'm like, man, Mike Williams is cheap. Man, Hunter Henry's a lot. Man, Keenan Allen's cheap. At
No,
some point, you're like, why aren't you just running Philip Rivers with them? So that's why, like, it definitely is something that needs to be thought of because if you are going to target these pass catchers in tournaments, it wouldn't be the worst idea to run Rivers with them. So I think it's interesting for sure. But on the other side, no interest in Tannehill for me.
yeah, no. I Rivers was one of the guys that I seen originally. I was like, these receivers are too cheap, and why am I not stacking it with the Rivers? Let's move on, John. What do we get? I mean, Kyle, what do we get next?
Next, we have probably my favorite matchup to target this week. It's Seattle versus Baltimore, just because the ownership in Atlanta versus the Rams is going to be so high. This one with a 49-point total. Baltimore are 3.5-point dogs on the road. I still think like the concentrated targets and the concentrated air yards you're getting between these two teams makes up for the fact that the total is lower than the Atlanta game. So for me, I think this game is just as good to stack, but it has lower ownership, I would assume. I think it's fair to say that it'll probably be less popular. So I think Lamar Jackson as an underdog, like this is another spot where like if he hits the double bonus, 300 passing yards, 300 or 100 rushing yards, he's going to win some people a lot of money. If they're underdogs, that's very possible. And then it's easy to just stack him with Mark Andrews, who sort of burned some people last week. Like, he didn't have a bad game. I think he had just under 15 points, but he was literally one catch for a single yard away from hitting the 100-yard bonus. He saw, like, almost, I think he saw 8 targets, and the next closest guy on their team was, like, 5, maybe. Because Marquise Brown was out, he expects to be out this week, or the Ravens expect him to be out this week again because he has not practiced all week. So it's easy to just, like, push him in as the number one target share on the team. And then you can run it back with if you expect Seattle to be up early, Chris Carson, who just dominates when they're ahead. And even when they're behind, like he still gets a decent amount of work. Or you can go with a guy like DK Metcalf, basically Mike Williams, but a few hundred miles north, getting so many air yards on the team. I guess, what are you doing? My question is, who do you like more between Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf? Russell Wilson, a great play. Is there any chance you run both of those players with Russell Wilson? Go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, I think you could do that. I like Russell Wilson. I think DK Metcalf's not really a cash play for me, but I get it. Like I get why people would go that way. I like Carson a ton, 6,500 for all the reasons John gave last week, and I didn't play him, so I'm just going to try to get back and probably play him this week. This is an interesting game because both Baltimore and Seattle, like we're usually known for having good defenses, and it just hasn't been that way. Like Baltimore's defense has been okay. Seattle's defense just hasn't been great. You talked about like the concentrated usage, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, like that stack. Marquise Brown, if he plays at 5,600, has to be someone you consider. But I think what's sneaky is maybe in tournaments, if Marquise Brown sits, rostering like Miles Boykin or Willie Snead, one of those like secondary options in terms of the passing game to kind of differentiate yourself and maybe running it back with Carson. John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like Chris Carson. Always like Chris Carson. Rashad Penny is back this week, but he's still the guy. Just something worth noting. Not a lot of interest, at least for me, in the Tyler Lockett. He obviously always has the upside, but the volume just really isn't there. He's had five or less targets in 4 of their 6 games this season. So I'm not going to play a guy priced up almost to 7K that just doesn't see the volume, because he basically has to take 1 or 2 long catches to the house to pay off the salary. So and then when you factor in Keenan Allen's just like $100 more, I'm probably just going to go there every time. So I guess to answer your question, Kyle, I would have more interest in DK Metcalf just because he's like $2,000 cheaper and seeing the same amount of volume. Will Disley, RIP, he is done for the year, I believe.
Yes,
So
he
Luke
is.
Luke Wilson is the only guy there, 3K. Not a great play, not one you feel good about, but I thought it was worth mentioning. But love the Lamar Jackson call. Playing from behind, he's like Russell Wilson. If you make him have to keep up with another team, he can flash that ceiling. So I like that call quite a bit.
Yeah. Anything else to add? I think that really covered like all the squares. Good job there, John. Anything else to add to this game, Bobby?
I don't know. That's pretty much it. I think we did we cover New Orleans, Chicago yet?
I mean, basically, because you don't have to say much about it. I don't think it's a game I'm super interested in. 38.5 point total. Like going into the season, if you told me that, that'd be insane. 38.5 point total. New Orleans right now are 4 point dogs on the road, but I don't know. We haven't seen Alvin Kamara really flash any semblance of upside since Teddy Bridgewater's been in. He's still getting the volume, but I just don't think like you want to play a guy priced up that much. It was a 17.5 implied team total. I think the only player I'm really interested in this game is probably Allen Robinson, who's just getting a ton of the work on his team. And they have at least like a semblance of upside. They have a 21 implied team total. Not great, but at least if you're dominating the work, I think he always has upside given the volume he gets. But I don't know. I can't imagine playing players in a game with 38.5 point total.
Yeah, I get it. I think like if Breeze was to play, I think then you would definitely, and Kamara didn't have the high ankle sprain, it would be interesting. The slate would be more interesting for me because I'd consider going in that direction for whatever reason. Um, I don't know. On the Chicago side, like Allen Robinson seeing those air yards, I don't mind that. 5,500, but there's not much to love. Even with like Trubisky back doesn't really move the needle. John, where are you kind of looking?
Yeah, I'm with you both on the Allen Robinson call. Just the volume and the price, makes him in consideration. The main thing is Alvin Kamara. He did not practice today, and they're saying, I know he had the ankle issue coming into last week, and I guess he hurt his knee during that game on Sunday. So it is actually the knee that has kept him out. He didn't practice today, so if he doesn't go, Latavius Murray, who saw a definitely more usage on Sunday, he's only 5,100. But going into Chicago is not necessarily a place I want to target running backs, especially with such a low total. But it is worth mentioning just because Alvin Kamara may not play on Sunday.
Okay, so I have a question. If Alvin Kamara doesn't end up playing, which is very much a possibility, is Latavius Murray bad chalk? He's not like priced down at 40, whatever, 100, like we've seen a lot of previous running backs who are backups get anointed as starters in the middle of the week. Like he's not very talented. He's not a great receiver. They have a low team total. Everything to me would say he'll be at least somewhat popular, and I am so inclined to fade that.
Yeah, if he's popular, like I'm not making a Malcolm Brown mistake again. There's no way I'm playing it.
Yeah, and to be fair, like Latavius Murray is light years better than Malcolm Brown. And I've been like waiting for the Latavius Murray game, but this ain't it, Chief.
No, not versus Chicago. No way. No.
No.
glad we're all in agreement because that is the end of the slate. Guys, everyone, thanks for joining. If you want to get our ownership, our optimizer, and of course access to our Discord where you can pretty much reach us at any time, go to thefantasybros.com/membership. Anything else to say before we head out of here for the day?